Greetings, classmates. For this week's discussion question, I would like to look at the modern rhetorical presidency through the lens of Obama and Trump, with a focus on each president's first address to the United Nations. My reason for examining these two speeches is because the speeches occurred at roughly 8 months into both men's presidencies. They mark the first major foreign policy speech for both men as President of the United States. They are given to the same audience, and given we are in the first year of the Trump presidency, the two speeches serve as one of the few points of rhetorical comparison between the two presidents. President Obama delivered his speech in September of 2009, roughly 8 years before President Trump delivered his remarks. If you would like to read the transcripts of both speeches, they are linked. I have given both speeches unofficial titles, which are based on major content found in the speeches. President Obama's speech I have dubbed the Four Pillars speech, and President Trump's speech I have dubbed the Sovereignty and the Three Pillars of Peace speech. For each speech, I will examine the major themes and major points of the speeches. Then I would like to analyze the intended audience of both speeches and what they tell us about presidential rhetoric. President Obama's first address to the United Nations can be described as a visionary, optimistic, forward-looking speech. He addresses the themes of idealism, globalism, multilateralism, environmentalism, and collectivism. Stressing his campaign themes of hope and change, Obama opens his speech by arguing for a new era of engagement and mutual interest and respect. Clearly, the criticisms of the Bush administration's unilateralism and wars in Iraq and Afghanistan weigh heavily on his mind. Obama indicates that America First will not be a feature of his foreign policy when he argues that a unipolar world will not last and a new age of multilateralism must come about. To achieve his vision, he refers to the four pillars of the future: non-proliferation and disarmament, in which the spread of nuclear weapons is stopped and the United States takes the lead in disarming; the pursuit of peace, in which a lasting Arab-Israeli peace is the goal; environmentalism, in which the United States must transform its energy economy and be subject to stricter environmental regulations; and a global economy that benefits all people, which can be achieved through financial stimulus and foreign aid to struggling economies, as well as stronger financial regulations on businesses and banks. As he closed his address, President Obama stresses the need for United Nations and that its shortcomings must be overlooked because the future will not be achieved through bickering over outdated grievances, but forging common ground. President Trump's first address to the United Nations takes a much different tone and can be described as realistic, cautionary, and bellicose. He addresses the themes of realism, sovereignty, unilateralism, militarism, and populism. After briefly addressing the tragedies of Hurricane Harvey and the strength of the United States since his election, he says that we are living in a watershed moment in history in which great prosperity, wealth, and advancement is threatened by terrorism and authoritarian states. To address these growing threats, Trump references the three pillars of peace found in the Marshall Plan: sovereignty, security, and prosperity. Regarding sovereignty and security, he makes it very clear that the United States will act unilaterally if required to protect U.S. citizens to secure its prosperity. In particular, he addresses the threat being posed by North Korea's and Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons. He singles out both nations, calling North Korea's Kim Jong-un a rocket man on a suicide mission, and calling Iran a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. He then goes on to stress that the U.S. will work with Muslim nations to confront radical Islamic terrorism, and the United States security needs will determine the length and scope of military operations, not politicians. Turning his focus on prosperity, he addresses two issues: the need for controlled immigration and human rights violators as an impediment to prosperity. Regarding immigration, he believed uncontrolled migration posed a risk to both the emigration country and the immigration country, as it drains human capital from the one and robs financial security from low and middle class citizens in the other. Turning his focus on the failures of the United Nations, he chastised Cuba and Venezuela for its treatment of its citizens and its suppression of freedom. As Trump indicates, socialism and communism end in devastation and failure. He closes his speech by bringing up the forgotten man so often mentioned in his campaign. For Trump, the ultimate duty of government is to protect its citizens, a goal achieved through the exercising of unilateral sovereignty. Both Trump and Obama had the same audiences. However, they were principally addressing one over the other. For Obama, his speeches clearly addressed the United Nations of the world community, which he feels distrusts America because of the Bush years. This is evidenced in his line, "Many around the world had come to view America with skepticism. Part of this was due to opposition to specific issues and a belief that America has acted unilaterally." Essentially, Obama's speech was very conciliatory in tone as he apologized for the sins of the United States, such as Guantanamo Bay, its unilateralism, and its reluctance to participate in global climate accords. Furthermore, he closes his speech by arguing that despite its flaws, the United Nations will be needed to achieve a peaceful future. Trump, on the other hand, turns Obama on his head. While he is presently addressing the United Nations, his principal audience is the American people, namely his supporters and the forgotten world allies of the Obama years. His recurring emphasis on American sovereignty and the need for unilateralism speak to his supporters who distrust international organizations and saw the Obama presidency as an era of U.S. weakness on the international stage. For example, he alludes to the one-sided deals which compromise United States national security, such as the Iran nuclear deal. He also criticizes the United Nations when he says, "We cannot wait for someone else, for faraway countries and far-off bureaucrats." One gains a sense of the America First theme of the speech when he states, "The United States of America has been among the greatest forces for good in the history of the world." Regarding Tullis's thoughts, Obama's speech takes a much more visionary and inspirational tone as he paints a picture of the future and impels the public towards it. Trump adopts the other Wilsonian rhetorical feature, such as a policy stance speech. While he does make some visionary references, his speech is much more policy-oriented and focuses on the issues of the day.